Virtual Theater, our very first episode. My name is Andy Spiteri, and I'm joined by my friend, Gooey Fame. Goo, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, Andy. I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty pumped, pretty jazzed about this episode right now.
I'm pretty pumped too, man. For everybody listening, first of all, thank you. Second of all, yes, this is the long-awaited, much-hyped debut episode of Virtual Theater. You've probably heard the ads that we've been running on the Champions Cast, so let me tell you exactly what this podcast is all about. Each episode of Virtual Theater that comes out is going to focus on a different video game movie. Now, of course, video game movies have something of a notorious reputation among fans and moviegoers alike, and we're here to dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of all these different video game movies. But before we do that and explore into this week's movie, tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody that doesn't know who you are, Goo.
We know each other through the wonderful Zelda Dungeon community. We both like talking about movies, and obviously video games have brought us together too. So that's why I'm here. I'm a video game lover and a movie lover, and this is like the cross-section of both, though I guess it's not very fruitful if you're looking for quality right off the bat, but
it's an acquired taste, maybe would be the most appropriate way to say it, what you're going to get off the bat. So I thought I was a film buff, and then I met Gooey, and he just puts me to absolute shame.
Well, I might just go to more movies. I think that's the only thing.
So I think that this is going to work well, because I think you see more movies, and I think I play more video games, and somewhere in the middle, we're going to meet, and we're going to produce really great episodes for you guys. So I'm really glad that we finally got this up and off the ground, and I'm excited to start this journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be great.
So let me give you guys the gist of the show. So obviously, we're going to go and break down everything about the particular movie that we're covering. And this week, we've got a treat for you. It's all about Street Fighter. So we're going to cover everything from some pre-production notes. We're going to go through the entire movie with you guys, almost like a commentary. And then we're going to add some nice little postscripts at the end of it. And it's going to be maybe fun. I don't know. Is watching Street Fighter considered fun?
Yeah.
Could be.
Little spoiler. It's fun. We were pretty critical, but I think we're looking with our more critical eye into what is a pretty fun movie.
And I can tell you what was fun for sure, and that was recording with Goo, having a couple beers and watching this movie. So I know that we had a blast. You guys are going to have a blast. Before we get started, though, we got to give a special shout-out to one of your friends, Paul. And he made that killer intro that you were listening to at the top of the show. It's probably stuck in your head. It's stuck in my head. I'm looking to get it as my ringtone. Tell us a little bit about Paul.
I would be down to listen to a whole album that sounded like that. So shout out to Paul from Becoming Rats, which is his solo project. He's got no social media presence right now, but he told us that he would update us when he does. But I will say in the meantime, he's also in a pretty sick band called Bringers, who they're working on an album right now. They only have a little bit of music up online, but if you want to search them out, just Google We Are Bringers, and that's got their Bandcamp, I think their Instagram and Facebook probably, but they go by that on all their handles. So just look up Bringers, We Are Bringers, Chicago band. They're great.
Nice. So yeah, we wanted to give just a huge shout out to him for putting together that theme, and just really what a great job, and what a sick tune when I heard that for the first time. We originally were going to do like a couple different variants of that, and I think both of us were just like, nope,
this is it.
This is it.
Yeah, it's so good.
This is the one. One last thing for everybody before we get to what you came here for, and that is, of course, to cover Street Fighter. We want this to be an interactive experience, and we kind of tossed around a few different ideas about how this is going to go, but I think what Gooey and I landed on is basically we want our audience to decide what it is that we cover and we watch. So at the end of this show, we're going to give you 4 options for the next movie that we cover. So it's going to be a Twitter poll, and you can find out what our poll is going to be if you head over to Twitter at virtualtheaterx. We're going to throw that poll up, and we'll give you the movie options at the end of the show. So definitely make sure that you stick around until all the way at the very end, and we'll give you 4 options for what we're going to cover next week. And all 4 of them are probably about in the same range as Street Fighter. So you're going to make sure that you want to stick around and listen to that. So, Goo, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get into it.
So we are finally here. It's our first episode
Yes.
of Virtual Theater, and we are doing a deep dive into what has been called maybe the greatest bad movie of all time. So we're finally here. It's Street Fighter, and this is a very memorable movie, if nothing else. Let's get some stuff out of the way first, though. This movie was released December 23rd, 1994, directed by Stephen E. D'Souza. He's got a pretty actually decent cast going on here. Of course, we got Jean-Claude Van Damme as Colonel Guile and Raul Julia as General M. Bison, and those are obviously your big players. And
Yes.
really, it's all about those two in this movie. That's the interactions between them, I think, are what really sells it to me.
That's like the glue that's holding this like weird mishmash together in a way.
So before we actually get into the movie, and we're gonna walk you through, we took some notes during the movie of moments and lines that made us chuckle, and we're gonna walk you through the plot, and I use that term loosely, of this movie and kind of comment on it as we go. But there's a lot of stuff that's going on in pre-production, and there's some things that maybe explain why this movie ended up the way that it ended up. So as is the case with a lot of video game movies, the developers and the publishers of their properties are understandably a little hesitant, a little controlling, if you will. Capcom, who publishes Street Fighter, allegedly had to approve every single aspect of this movie. So that feels like a recipe for too many cooks in the kitchen to me.
Yeah, I think this movie is almost defined in the actual movie by too many cooks in the kitchen, and I think that could be traced back to probably Capcom wanting to get all those iconic characters in there.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was one of the things that I wrote down right away, is like, there are so many guys, and I think that definitely started from the top and bled all the way down. Another factor that may have led to this film's untimely demise is Jean-Claude Van Damme took up $8 million of the film's $35 million budget. So, I mean, I'm pretty bad at math, but that's like 25% of your budget for like one guy right there.
And tying that back into the Capcom thing, I think I had read that they wanted the movie to be like produced in like just under a year, essentially. So there's like this money constraint, this time constraint, and actually, do you know much about the director of this?
No, I don't really know a lot of his other works.
Okay, I think I'm gonna blow your mind with this a little bit. Then I wanted to surprise you. So I think this is his directorial debut, and before he also wrote the movie, and he is a noteworthy Hollywood screenwriter, actually, and he has written some bangers of movies. He wrote Die Hard. He wrote Commando. He wrote 48 Hours. Like, he's written some awesome movies. Yeah, some awesome action movies. It's kind of amazing that he wrote this movie and he wrote Die Hard.
I kind of feel for the poor bastard, though. Like, he probably was excited to get this opportunity to do this movie, and to say the movie didn't necessarily turn out maybe the way that he wanted is probably fair to say. Having Street Fighter the movie on your resume, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I will say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you look at his IMDb, it's like it's not just Street Fighter. It's like even before this, there's some movies that are questionable, but it's like after Die Hard and the the late 80s, it's like a little bit of a downhill for him, Unfortunately, I'm sure he's had an all right career, but
yeah. Hey, we're just a couple of schmucks, complaining about Street Fighter, and this guy's probably making bank somewhere. But
I couldn't make this movie, So.
Yeah. He did give us some good lines, so that's good directing right there, if nothing else.
Oh yeah,
this movie is primarily filmed in Australia, and I guess one of the conditions they got some tax breaks or something like that for filming primarily in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the conditions is that they had to cast a Australian actor or actress in a prominent role, which is how we got Kylie Minogue, a pop superstar from Australia, cast as Cammy. So Gooey, what is your favorite Kylie Minogue song?
I think I just really remember. I feel like this is the biggest hit. The I just can't get you out. Yeah, yeah. That's so good, though.
You know what?
Yeah, that's a great song.
She had a big song in I want to say the late '80s or early '90s, and it's a big song, and I can't remember what it is. And
she was definitely bigger in Australia, and I think also in the UK, some of that carried over too. I've known some people from the UK who are a little bit more aware of her music and her acting too, because I think she was on a pretty big Australian sitcom or soap opera, something like that. So they didn't cast someone who was didn't have some acting chops. It's not like a huge travesty that she was cast in this movie or anything.
Because I mean, outside of Jean-Claude Van Damme, Kylie Minogue is probably the biggest name on the cast, like in terms of just overall exposure. And I always thought it was funny how this pop singer ended up in Street Fighter. That always that doesn't seem like a match that's made in heaven.
Well, you know what? Chun-Li, the actress who plays her, Ming-Na Wen, is the voice of Mulan, actually. So
really,
yeah.
Wow! Now that you say that, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and she's a regular in the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm actually a pretty big fan of. So, she's being the voice of Mulan. A lot of people wouldn't recognize you on the street or anything, but she's done some stuff.
That is like as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my god, you're totally right.
It like unlocked something in your brain.
Oh man, that's the kind of good stuff you could expect to hear about on Virtual Theater, everybody.
She's pretty good. Like, I think the like some of this deeper cast, I don't really know them, but I think they're doing all right with some of the kind of rushed, kind of corny dialogue they have. You know, I mean, some of it just lands flat, but you know, the actors are doing their best, I think.
I think so. I think, you know, they're going to do what we're doing right now. They're having a couple beers before they go shoot. They're going to have a ball with it.
You always should, wouldn't being involved with this movie.
So a little bit on a sadder note and a little bit of a more somber note. Raul Julia, who of course excellently played General M. Bison in this movie. I think we can definitively say that he was probably the best part about this movie performance-wise. Was suffering from cancer during filming and actually passed away about 2 months before the movie came out. The film is, of course, dedicated to his memory. So definitely, you know, sad. He was gone too soon, but an awesome performance, I think, from him in his final on-screen performance. You know, we're gonna poke some fun about the hamminess and the cheesiness in this movie. But like he was really selling it. Like every time he was on screen, he was just absolutely captivating.
It is weird because it's like, on one hand, it's like, oh, like bummer, your last movie is like kind of this weird train wreck, but also like kind of cool that it's like when people remember this movie now, it's like they just remember you in this movie, and it it's not just because it's some trivia that he died or whatever. It's because he is like no offense again to the other actors, but he is like crazy bringing it compared to everyone else.
This guy is committed to M.
I believe
Bison.
He is Bison. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when he shot that lightning, I was like, Jesus, Raul Julia could shoot a lightning from his hands. That's crazy.
a lot of people say this when they're like cast in video game movies, but I watched some short clip and he was saying that he did it as like a gift to his sons. Like his sons were big fans. Yeah. That's a nice outcome of this movie, at least.
Yeah, it's touching, and I think it's a good way to go out. I guess that his illness kind of played havoc with the shooting schedule. They were originally going to do some scenes at a particular time, but he was just in such a weakened state that a lot of his scenes and especially his fight scenes, especially had to be rescheduled. And as a result of that, a lot of the cast got like pretty much on the fly training for their fight scenes, which is, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but maybe why some of the fight scenes don't deliver. Yeah.
It shows like constantly in this movie, which it's like, it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to not have Raul Julia in your movie? Like it's cool that they were accommodating and stuff. And, but yeah, it just unfortunately affects a lot of the scenes, of course.
Yeah. And it's too bad because like, you would expect a movie named Street Fighter to just have some rip-rockin' fight scenes, but unfortunately those aren't too prolific in this movie, as we're going to touch on in just a little bit here.
Of course.
What is prolific in this movie, which I was kind of surprised about? There's a lot more cussing and sexual innuendo in this movie than I remember as a kid, which is funny because the original version was rated R, actually, and Capcom like had a fit about it.
That's kind of interesting. I mean, would you have wanted to see that, like an R-rated Street Fighter movie?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what an R-rated street movie is. Like, are they just bleeding? Or, like, is Cammy in her... I don't know.
Actually, I thought the tone of this movie is, like, perfect, despite all its flaws. But there's even still things in this movie that I was like, this didn't really need to be here. But it's overall, like, I think the tone is right on the line where it's, like, you can enjoy this as, like, a goofy movie as an adult, but like what kid didn't love this movie?
Oh yeah, I put this movie up high on a pedestal for my video game movies. This was one that I pushed for to do this episode because I loved it as a kid, and when I watched it last night, I was just like, oof. Hey. So let's get to the movie here itself, and so what's gonna happen now is, Gooey, I'm gonna guide you and our listeners kind of through a very brief synopsis through the movie from start to finish, and we'll stop and discuss some certain points along the way.
That sounds great.
And just kind of get our take on what the hell was happening in here.
I want to say I'm glad you're like guiding, because almost like every second of this movie is like something that you could like talk about, whether bad or good. Like there is just like thousands of things in this movie that are either like amazing or head scratching or terrible, and I was like, how are we gonna talk about this? Like,
and it's funny you mentioned it too, because like there's some scenes that are like they're so short and they're so like they're just crammed together. It's just like one after another, and they don't always pertain to one another. Just because like again, there's so many characters in this movie. For anyone that has not had the pleasure of seeing this fine movie, this is the general gist of it. There is a war going on in the country of Shadaloo. The dictator, General M. Bison, has taken a bunch of hostages and thrown them in a fucking pit into his lair and demanded $20 billion from the UN in order to release them. And this doesn't sit well with the army. So the army, led by none other than Colonel Guile. William Guile, actually. I didn't know that was his first name, but I guess it's William.
Is that canon to the games?
I played Street Fighter, the movie, the game.
Oh, okay. So it was certainly canon to that game, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hell yeah, that's canon. So Bill Guile is leading his troops against General M. Bison, and he is going in to rescue those hostages, by God, and save his friend Charlie Blanca, who is one of the hostages. And I don't exactly know what Guile was thinking, but he's calling out. He's like, "Hang on, Charlie, hang on, buddy," and that, of course, Bison's looking at him like, "You're fucked. I'm gonna pick on you now."
He like drew it. He made it worse. Like it's kind of his fault in a way. What happens to Blanca?
On the flip side of that, Guile kind of looks like a goof, but M. Bison looks like a badass because this guy is just he's snapping people's necks right and left in the opening couple minutes there. That's a damn awesome intro.
Also, one thing I want to shout out in that part is like I like the way his lair looks, and I like his costume. Like I think the costumes in this are very good for some of the characters. So yes. they nailed it. It's like cartoony and goofy, but like, and he looks like him in the game, and it's silly, but it's awesome, and he looks badass.
When I was a kid, I built like kind of a replica of Bison's lair in my basement, actually. And
no kidding.
Oh yeah, like not a very big one, like big enough for my action figures. I think I had like Batman as M. Bison or something like that. But yeah, I got like, I don't know, maybe a cup or something like that. That was his little flying car or something like that.
Wow. At like this point in the movie, which is like a minute into the movie, I'm still on board with like what's happening.
Yeah, this is literally like the first minute. So minute 2 starts and we flip over to Chun-Li and
it goes off the rails.
She's a reporter, which is strange. So Chun-Li and her crew, which include E Honda, former sumo wrestler from Hawaii, and Balrog, a former boxer that M. Bison somehow screwed out of his boxing career. They're all a news team together. So all of these guys, they put on their applications for the news team. Used to be a sumo, used to be a boxer. Yeah, you're in. Come on.
From what I understand is like this is like they're there because like the reporter and thing it's like a front, like they're right. They're like actually plotting against him. So that's like the twist later. So it's confusing at first, but it's like okay, I see kind of what they're doing here.
So what did you think of this ragtag crew together? Do you kind of like the chemistry between the three of them, or not working for you?
It's okay for what it is, but kind of like we said, it's like, when I was just listening to you like recap back what's going on, you're like, okay, there's M. Bison who's trying to save his friend Blanca, or there's Guile who's trying to save his friend Blanca from M. Bison. I'm like, okay, I'm on board. All right, now cut to minute 2. Now we got Chun-Li. We got all these characters, and there's something to like about everyone a little bit, but it just feels like you're getting all these characters. They're throwing names at you that I would only remember because I know the characters from the game type thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And everyone gets like these little exposited, like tiny little backstories and all this stuff that it just doesn't, it's not natural, you know what I mean? Like
this seems like as good a time as any to talk about the video that I think you showed me a couple weeks ago, and it was kind of a retrospective of filming this movie from the one and only Balrog.
I can't even describe what it is.
Okay, I'm gonna try. So the actor's name is Grand L. Bush. So Grand Bush is the fucking guy who plays Balrog, and Grand Bush had this like just super serious documentary filmed about how he was playing Balrog. And at first when I watched this, I wasn't sure if it was like a legit interview, and then it kind of went into the more like it was so serious that it was parody that I was like, okay, well this is just for laughs. And then it teetered back into like legit territory, and I didn't even know what I was watching, and I probably did a horrible job describing that, but it truly has to be seen to be believed.
It says actor Grand L. Bush breaks silence about playing Balrog. And then in the description, it says Grand L. Bush broke his silence about he became the first human in the world to bring Street Fighter's Balrog to life on the silver screen. The first human in the world.
Damn it, that's a trendsetter right there.
Do yourself a favor and go look this video up and try to like figure out what is supposed to be taken away from this.
So we're like 3 minutes into this movie, and we've met about 30 characters so far.
Yep.
So and all of them are cheesy as hell. You're 5 minutes in, and I actually looked down at my phone when I was watching yesterday, and by the 5 minute mark, we had met Guile, Cammy, T-Hawk, Bison. we had met Blanka, we had met Chun-Li, we'd met Honda, Balrog, we met all these guys. Just a flood of people so far. And this is within 5 minutes, and you can instantly tell that this movie is just going to be cheesy as hell. So like, what's your impression after this first 5-minute soiree of meeting all of these guys?
You mentioned Cammy and T-Hawk, and it's like they're almost used appropriately. Like they're there, but like they don't really try to like force them in a way. Like they don't try to force too much about them, but they still do the thing where like later in the movie, for example, like they added in a line where Guile has to be like, "Hey T-Hawk, what's with your bandana?" And he has to describe. It's like,
as
why?
They're sneaking into the fortress.
It's like, no, like we'll just wait for the second movie or something. Like we'll get the T-Hawk, Cammy. We'll like worry about them later, But that was 100% my impression. Was this is 5 minutes in, and there were actually various points in the movie where I like was checking the timestamp and being like, this is how long it's been. Not saying that it dragged or whatever. It was more like, whoa, I can't believe it's only 5 minutes in.
I know, it's almost like too much in that 5 minutes, because you've just met like so many different characters. You're introduced to the country of Shadaloo and the war and all of this stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
And you think, okay, maybe from here on out, it's like maybe they can expand on the characters now. It's 5 minutes in. We got plenty of time. It's not a long movie, but we got time, right?
I'm probably not going to say this about many of these movies, but this movie could have probably used an extra 20 minutes or so just to give it some breathing space.
It could have, but also on the flip side, I think it could have just used like make it about characters. Like two characters, I don't know though. Like we've seen in recent years, I think now we've got all these big team up superhero movies, right? And if you look at like Into the Spider-Verse, for example, like they found a way to like weave in multiple characters, but like still realize like, okay, but the movie is about Miles and Peter, like they know who the movie is about still, instead of being like, it's gotta be like kind of about everyone, but really about no one almost.
So that's an interesting segue into my next point.
Okay.
So the next scene, we meet Ryu and Ken, and obviously those two guys are the faces of the Street Fighter franchise in pretty much every medium, Ryu in particular.
Yeah.
So in this movie, they're basic hustlers. Like they break into a nightclub owned by Sagat, and they're watching him and his champion Vega fight a bunch of people, and they're not like they don't come off as like the proud warriors that you'd kind of grown to know them as in the games. So my question is this for you: should this movie have been framed around them, and could this movie have been maybe better executed on, well, I guess every single level, had this kind of centered around their competitive relationship in becoming the best, or was going with Guile like, I guess, the right move? Or I don't know, it just feels like a strange spot for Ken and Ryu to me.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I know this, like they've got their chance to make one Street Fighter movie, right? And Capcom wants all these characters in it, but I almost feel like it would have been better served like if they had made a movie about Ryu and Ken and Sagat, and they had made a separate, like, almost make like the Street Fighter cinematic universe almost, which that wouldn't exist then, but you know what I mean? Like, focus. Like,
your first movie is Guile versus Bison. Your second one is Scott and Vega and Ryu and Ken, or like something like that, or even Ryu versus Ken, and then they come together, or I don't know, something.
I'm not like a big fighting game player, a big Street Fighter player, so like I don't know like the deep lore. I've just played the games, like arcade mode or whatever. So like I didn't even really mind like them being con men. Like, okay, they're making they got to like adapt this into a movie a little bit. You could say like, oh, they're con men, but they know martial arts and they train together, and you can do anything from there. And some people are gonna get mad, but you've got some foundation there. But they really didn't do that, and they really didn't even have a role in this movie. I feel like Like they're so superfluous. I mean, most people
like,
are in this movie.
Even of the two, I feel like Ken had the bigger character arc than Ryu. Like Ryu was kind of presented as this like proud, noble warrior, but then like on the other hand, he's also a con man selling fucking guns that fire tennis balls to somebody. Which,
Yeah, I kind of wonder
how great was that spot. Like,
yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, there are so many times where this movie is hilarious, but that's usually not. It doesn't appear intentional, but I'm okay with that. But then, like, they also go for like they like straight up dive deep into like trying to do comedy, and it's goofy and I like it, but it's not as funny as like other parts of the movie that aren't.
Oh, come on, that tennis ball spot was awesome.
I actually wrote down so many times in this movie where there is like missed opportunities for like cool fight scenes. Like this should have been a martial arts movie, right?
Oh yeah.
And there was a fight scene here, but it's just like you said earlier, you can tell like they didn't have much time to like choreograph it, and the editing, they edit around it so hard. Like they cut to on like guys just like punching at the camera and like guys falling back. You know, you never see any actual like fighting or martial arts or anything cool like that you would like. That would have, the movie could have been totally bonkers off the wall, but if it had like cool fight scenes, it wouldn't matter, you know. It's
yeah, for sure.
Like I wouldn't have minded the story at all if at least we just got to see like cool fight scenes with like Street Fighter characters, you know?
Like can you imagine like Jet Li as Ryu? Like how unreal would that have been?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. Like getting someone who, I mean, I'm sure these actors could have done all right actually if they just had proper training.
Yeah,
like,
I don't mean that as a
know
slight against Byron Mann, who played Ryu, or anybody in particular.
Absolutely,
just they were never really given the chance to have like that killer fight scene. They're always like little skirmishes, and that's it.
It gets worse later where they tease the idea of a fight scene and then they like cut it off, and it's always like, why would you even like make me think there's going to be a cool fight scene if you're not going to do it, you guys?
Yeah, I don't know. Something about Ryu and Ken feels off in this movie to me. It feels like they should be the focus, and if they're not the focus, like I don't know, like maybe, and we'll never know if they had planned on making more Street Fighter movies or not. But like it does seem like something that probably still could be explored, like a Ryu versus Ken movie. I think could be kind of compelling if you based it around, you know, who's the better fighter, and like have a lot of martial arts shit in there. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So it feels like they were miscast in this movie. Not actor wise, but
they actually hint at like a cool, like something that's a simple but cool premise later in the movie. Like they don't have a story about their relationship at all for like the whole movie, but then in the final act, like after that final act, the big scene has already started, the big fight scene. They then introduce this idea of Ken not wanting to fight.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, why? Like, you know, you could make a movie where that's like the whole theme and emotional core of the movie.
Yeah,
you know,
like, that's exactly what I mean. Like, it's so weird. And like the only point up until then that you could maybe say hinted at some dissension is like when Ryu says something along the lines of like, I can't believe I listened to you, when, you know, they're about to fight Vega.
Yeah,
it seems like a miss to me.
I would totally be down, like you said, I'm not even that big of a Street Fighter fan, but I'm always rooting for a good video game movie, and if they said, oh yeah, we're making a Ryu and Ken movie, like, that's good enough for me. And
if you're rooting for video game movies, make sure you head over to Twitter @virtualtheater. Follow us. We're covering all the great video game movies. I totally feel you right there.
Yeah.
So I wrote this down. I was going to bring it up later, but I'll just bring it up now. Does the guy who plays Ken not just look like Chandler Bing to you? he's cracking jokes. He's got that Chandler kind of haircut. I don't know.
He makes like these like smirks that are like, you just like are like,
they're very Chandler.
Yeah, they're obnoxious a little bit.
For all the movie's faults, I think you touched on it earlier. Like most of the characters actually look pretty cool. Like they look like who they're supposed to look like. The exception to that, to me, was Ryu and Ken.
It helped when they got them in there, when they like kind of worked around getting them into their traditional iconic outfits, at the end.
Yeah, that definitely was a big thing. But then that was the uniform that Bison's bad guys wear.
I know. I love there was a lot of that in this movie where like we were talking about, where it's like they had to get in the reference, if you know what I mean. Like they had to like figure out a way to make it happen. You see this a lot in like superhero movies where it's like, they can't just be like, I'm gonna wear a costume. It has to make sense.
There has to be a function to it.
Yeah. And that happens with this. It happens with Dalsim later, where he eventually has like the chain around his neck, and it's like, what? Why? We don't need this. Come on.
Okay, so we've been talking about Ryu and Ken for a long time here. Actually, let's talk about Dalsim. So the next scene is M. Bison putting Guile's stupid remarks to good use. He takes his buddy Charlie, who now he knows is Guile's best friend, and he is going to make him into a super soldier monster. So we have an imprisoned Dr. Dalsim, who deep down seems like he might be a pretty good guy. But what can he do? He's in fucking chains.
I'm gonna go straight out and say this character could be totally cut from the movie. Like other ones, I'm like, okay, maybe you could have developed this more, but I was like, no.
He's turning Charlie into the monster. Blanca.
Yes, he's got like bags of like Gatorade that they're like injecting into him. Like they're apparently these like important nutrients that are just in like some plastic bag or whatever. It's like,
give him some Red Bull. I don't know. I was disappointed in the way that you kind of got Blanca. You never really saw him in action. He didn't have any of his signature like electricity to him. Like you just said, he has bags of cat piss being put into him to make him turn green or whatever. Like this one again seems like kind of a miss to me. This whole subplot. I think you just nailed it on the head. This could have probably not existed.
Well, you did mention the lightning thing. Like also, like, there was like no like magic in this, which I guess I'm okay. Like except for at the end, like Bison like shot lightning, but like Ryu and Ken don't throw fireballs and all this stuff. I guess
Ryu does throw a Hadouken at the very end, but you don't see the blue stuff. He just does it right beside the dude's chest, which I never noticed before, but I noticed that.
It's more of the like we got the pose, but no fire, no magic. But as far as the Blanca character, I think you could make a movie that's Guile and Bison, and like Guile's motivation is his friend. I don't think this is like in line with the games, but you could have made it work with this movie. Like Blanca is his friend who's in prison that he like has to confront at some point, but they don't pay it off in this, and in fact, it's like really weird.
We'll touch on that scene in just a bit because it is really weird. But before we get there, we go back to Ryu and Ken, and they're basically being held captive after trying to scam Sagat. So Sagat throws Ryu into the ring with Vega. They're doing some poses or whatever, and like when they're finally about to throw down, Guile drives a fucking tank through the wall, and you're all under arrest, and arrests everybody, which is amazing.
It is amazing, except for this is exactly what I'm saying, where it's like, okay, Street Fighter. Here's a street fight. It's a cage fight. Like, here we go. Like, let's get like, I wouldn't have been mad if this movie was 5 minutes longer and they had a fight scene here.
Yes.
But it's like they just tease the idea of it and cut it off. Like, I get that, like, later maybe they think they pay it off because we get the Ken and Ryu versus Sagat and Vega later. But I thought, that for me, it was like, you've given me nothing so far. Just, like, exposition.
If you're gonna tease the fight and take it away, you better have like a hell of a fight later when you finally get to it. And they don't. So Guile arrests everybody's ass and takes them all to jail. And when he sees Ryu and Ken beat the shit out of everybody in jail, he basically concocts this plot to put them in as undercover agents into Sagat's regime, and then thinking that they will lead him to Bison because I guess Sagat sells Bison weapons. I don't know about you, but I actually dug Sagat in this movie. I thought he was pretty cool. I think the guy who played him did a good job with what he had. I don't know. I liked him.
Yeah, the actor was good. Like, his
I thought that his story was like pretty good.
It doesn't really go anywhere. Like, especially if you're thinking about it in combination with like Ryu and Ken, other than he loses to him. But yeah, it's totally, he plays his role well, and it's all right. It's solid.
Guile has this plan to get over the idea that Ryu and Ken are actually traitors and they're not just moles, which would probably be fairly obvious. He concocts this elaborate scheme where they break out of jail and Ken actually shoots him dead, quote unquote. But before we get there, we actually get this amazing line that I want to throw it if you don't mind. So Sagat goes to, as he's being arrested and hauled off into this transport truck, he just goes to Guile, I own this country. And Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back with this amazing line of like, oh yeah? Well, I'm the repo man and you're out of business. And it is fucking awesome. It's so good.
I was like, that's what a repo man does, I guess. He doesn't really put people out of business, but it was great. That was actually that's one of those things that was more funny than like some of the like jokes they tried to play. Yeah. I know that was probably meant to like get a laugh, but I think it got a laugh not exactly the way they expected,
His tough guy talk it's so good.
Yeah. We should also just say like he's promoting, he's like this American hero, but like I'm not saying you can't have a Belgian accent and be from America, but it's just funny it reminds me of like when Schwarzenegger has to play like the all-American guy in some movies. It's like I actually don't dislike it. I think it's awesome.
He busts out that like shining American flag tattoo on his bicep too, which is amazing. So during this breakaway, Ken shoots Guile a couple times in the chest. Guile goes down, and everyone is really playing it off as a big deal. Guile is dead, so it seems like the bad guys have won here. So taking it upon herself to react when all seems lost, Chung-Li places a tracker on the bus that Ryu and Ken have just commandeered from the prison that is driving all of these prisoners away in the effort to track it down and find Bison's hideout for herself. Nobody, I guess, notices that Guile's breathing when he's down on the ground. So far, so good for this plan.
So far, so good for the plan. Question mark. If I don't know what the plan is, I'm going to spoil that, but I'm not sure what the plan is. But
okay, so next we get what is a contender for the scene of the movie. We go to Bison, and he's talking about where his food court is going to go in his new skull-shaped headquarters that he's going to build in Bisonopolis after he's conquered the entire world. And this guy cuts a promo that is just an absolute tearjerker. He is giving an inspirational speech about how he's going to solve all of the world's problems by taking over everything and being a benevolent dictator.
It's one of those things where, like, a lot of the characters in this movie, like, they're not developed, and they're just kind of based on tropes from other movies, right? And that's totally Bison, too. But because of this performance, like, I just am convinced that he's, like, a good movie villain, even though, like, his plan is nonsense. You know what I mean? His motivation and plan is just total, like, it's like 80s cartoon villain nonsense, but I'm like, yeah, this is one of the greatest movie villains of all time.
Oh, yeah, this is good shit right here. Bisonopolis. He's got Zangief shedding a tear.
Oh,
for goodness sake. This guy is emotional. So I think we can safely say when we're seeing this, like, this is probably up there already with the hammiest movies of all time.
Yeah.
And we're probably only like 40 minutes in.
Yeah, all those jokes are like exactly what I mean, where it's like, all right, you told a little funny joke, guys.
We flip back into I get, would this be like the UN headquarters or like Guile's headquarters? I don't even know what you'd call it. The army base?
I think it was like it was like a AN, I think they called it, like fake UN essentially.
Okay, so Chun-Li breaks into the fake UN base here, and she is going full on ninja and breaking in. And she is realized that there's two trackers on this van, her own and another one, and she's tracing the signal or the source of the signal of the other tracker, which leads her to the fake UN building. And she finds Guile, who is playing dead, but hanging out under the fucking sheet in the morgue, just waiting for someone to discover that he's alive, just so that he can scare the shit out of Chun-Li.
This whole thing, like, yeah, it's like, why is he hanging out there alone? Like, no one's there. The whole thing...
Nobody's there.
One, him getting shot and fake dying, and this scene, like, only exist for us, the viewer. Like his plan... I'm giving it away, but, like, his plan isn't to actually fool anyone or do anything. And I don't know why he's hanging out under this sheet. I don't know. You could say, like, maybe he's so really... Bad. Yeah, maybe he's trying not to give away his cover or whatever, but then he clearly doesn't care about that, we find out.
Yeah, he's given speeches not too long after this.
Yeah,
so
no sense.
Guile, he wakes up, and apparently he's just been sleeping there. He's got ketchup all over his shirt. I think he just did it to scare Chun-Li. He must have figured out that she was coming in or something like that. He kind of lets her in on the plan, and, like, they're like, kind of flirting, I guess, after this.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
It was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mind the pairing, like, in principle. I don't mind that particular pairing.
In principle, but, like, it goes without saying about, like, you can make Ryu and Ken comment, like, if that's different from the game, whatever, but, like, more in the context of this movie, it's like, that, you know, jumping ahead a little bit, it's like, other than Cammy, who, like I said, is, like, not a character, like, Chun-Li's, like, the only female character in this movie, and, like, all the, like, important male characters, like, are, like, hitting on her and stuff, and I'm like, do we need this in this movie? Like, what, did it add anything? It didn't add anything. Nothing really did, and no one had an arc, but, like, Chun-Li definitely doesn't really even get much of an arc, I think. And I don't know.
Really. There's some good scenes with her that we'll get to, but it was, like I said, I don't mind the pairing in principle. Like, if you wanted to pair Chun-Li and Guile together, but, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because for all of his strengths as an actor, Jean-Claude Van Damme is kind of like, I don't know, maybe not the smoothest talker or something like that when it comes to courting. He was just kind of, like, very, like, on the nose and not subtle at all with his flirtations. I don't know, something about it was weird.
But also, like you said, you were like, I don't know if they're flirting. Like,
well, that's kind of it. Like at the end of the movie, they're definitely flirting, and here I think they were trying to, like, build up that subtlety where, like, they were kind of subtly flirting, but I just don't think that Jean-Claude Van Damme does subtle. You know what I mean? Like,
and you just didn't need it. Like, his motivation could have been save my friend Blanca. Like, I don't get how Chun-Li factors into this other than, like I said, everyone's based off of like, your ideas from other action movies, right? So, like, Bison has all these things you just expect, and you kind of expect the main hero, male character and female character, to get together, but it's like, why? Like, they don't care, like, they don't really even interact much in this movie.
Well, yeah, it was weird because, like, the beginning of the movie, Guile's telling Chun-Li to go to hell when she wants to interview him, and now he's hitting on her after he's scared her by revealing he's not dead in the bunker of the UN. Like, are you guys listening? Like, listeners, are you following this shit? Like,
I think you're doing a good job, actually, in a weird way. Well, here's another thing. They tease something that could be interesting, where Jean-Claude Van Damme says, like, this isn't about your revenge or whatever, it's about mine. And you think, okay, maybe, like, there's gonna be some, like, who really gets to, like, seek out the revenge, or, like, I don't know. I wasn't actually expecting this because I feel like it's too much to ask. But it's like maybe there's a cool idea for a movie if you wanted to make the movie take Blanca out and you have, it be about Chun-Li, Guile, and Bison, and that plot element. Maybe that's something. But no, it was just like a line they wrote. And you go, okay, I've seen other action movies.
We're going to some random ass party that both M. Bison and Sagat are at, and Sagat has, of course, brought Ryu and Ken. And for whatever reason, Chun-Li and her crew are there. They're performing. Yeah. They're dressed up in costumes, and nobody seems to recognize him, even though she's a fucking television reporter and the only one in Shadaloo. So
this actually gave me whiplash a little bit, because it was like we were in the scene of them talking, and then we cut to I just felt like this was meanwhile almost. I didn't feel like any time had passed, but then all of a sudden it's like here's Chun-Li somewhere else at night. And I was like, wait, what? Oh, okay. I had to adjust. I was like, what is going on here?
There's a deleted scene somewhere out there that's got the missing 20 minutes between this. But it gives us one of the best moments of this movie where Bison, just serious as a stone, tries to pay Sagat for the weapons he's buying with fucking McDonald's money, and it's got M. Bison's face on it, and he dead ass says well, this will be the currency after I take over the world. You're going to be rich.
Yeah, he adds in another element to his plan where he's going to kidnap the Queen of England and force them to acknowledge his money as proper currency, and
which is going to be 5 times the pound.
I was like, okay. He's got every villain motivation you could ever ask for. He's the ultimate villain,
So this guy is just the ultimate gangster at this point. You could tell it's Sagat. And props to Sagat, because everyone at this point has been very fearful and back down when Bison is around him and around them and not challenged him or whatever. But Sagat basically says what the hell is this? And there's this awesome standoff between him, and Ryu and Ken kind of find themselves in the middle. Before eventually a truck that's on fire, filled with explosives, drives its way down and blows everything up. This is just after Ken has also tried to hit on Chun-Li, and Chun-Li's led him away, and Ryu follows Ken, and they've kidnapped them, and now they're all on the same page. They're all working against Bison, and there's a lot of stuff going on at this random-ass party. But the one takeaway I had, and I wrote it down, was does this not seem like mid-90s WWF where everybody has an occupational gimmick? You've got the sumo, you've got the boxer, you've got the dancer, you've got Vega. It's just, oh man. So this leads to one of the other great lines of the movie where Chun-Li has seemingly live streamed this burning truck that's rolling downhill to smash everybody. And so they're all just watching it on TV instead of running away. And so you hear Zangief just, bust out the change the channel as if that's going to stop the truck from
another classic Zangief gag. Yeah.
This one it was so bad it was good, that it was bad that it was kind of good again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It went around the world a couple times. The comedic world a little bit for me.
It kind of reminded me of when Sideshow Bob is stepping on all those rakes, and at first it's funny, and then you're like, oh my god, this is going on for too long, this is not funny, and it went on for so long that it was funny again.
Yeah, except that it's totally that, but except that all that the rakes are in your mind, because he says that line in a second, and then it's me wrapping my head around the joke of yeah.
So Guile, who is pretending to be dead, is out in public delivering a very public speech to all of his troops, not giving two shits that he is probably giving Ryu and Ken away, or probably being slaughtered somewhere by Bison and Sagat. But this guy is given one heck of a promo when John Hammond's nephew from Jurassic Park: The Lost World comes in and tells him, "Hey, buddy, the UN is negotiating with M. Bison. We're going to give them $20 billion to release these hostages. Guile cuts a promo and basically says, like, we can all go home.
Yeah,
Bison's
war
gonna
is
get what he
over.
wants, but we can all go home. And he gives a good speech and rallies his troops to go and kick Bison's ass so hard the next M. Bison wannabe is gonna feel it. Whose inspirational speech did you like better, Guile or Bison?
So his, much like Bison, was what he's saying is kind of nonsense in a way, or it's like I don't know if I actually care about what he's saying, or like, is he delivering a message that the movie is trying to tell me? It's all like, that's all not the case. But much like Bison's, it's just like the performance sold me on it, where I was like, okay, I'm on board. But that being said, Bison still wins out just for the sheer gravitas of Raul Julia.
Yeah, I think I give the edge to Bison as well, but like, something about that line, and we're gonna kick his ass so hard that the next Bison wannabe is gonna feel it. Like,
yeah, I was ready to hop in those boats,
Yeah, I'm not going home. I'm going to Shadaloo.
I want to say this feels like the final speech before you're like, if this was a Marvel movie, right? This is like the moment before that last big battle, which it is, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
This is 45 minutes into the movie. The movie's not long either, but it's literally like the halfway point of the movie. So like the first half of the movie is just setting up all of this, and then the second half is like a big battle where like everyone's story is like thrown in there. Yeah, the pacing is just so insane. Yeah.
So you've got Chun-Li, who I'm gonna give a homage to one of my favorite podcasts, actually, because when they talk about someone that is like very good looking or something, they say Roll Tide.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say Chun-Li here, who is in her costume looking very Roll Tide. She looks very pretty.
Yeah.
Is telling Bison how he killed her entire family back in the day, I don't know, a couple, maybe 10 years ago or whatever it was, and she's been waiting for this day for revenge for a long time, and that her father died protecting his village. And Bison, who is basically telling her very flippantly, like, for you that was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday.
That's like one of the best lines in the whole movie.
The entire time that he's being such a prick, he's hitting on Chun-Li too. Like, he's getting his bedroom wardrobe on, and it's a weird scene. He
has a hat stand.
I think it's one of the best in the movie,
with multiple hats that are like just different colors. Yeah, it's a good scene. So, I like going back to, I guess, what I said before. I was like, Bison, he doesn't need to hit on Chun-Li. Like, it actually didn't even feel like in character. It didn't make sense. Yeah, like, that's like the only really. I mean, nothing he does makes sense. But I was like, I feel like they just added that in because, like you said, the movie villain's gotta like, there's gotta be a thread of like sexual violence or something. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what the bad guy does. But it just didn't even. Definitely
a weird scene.
But the line is the line. It's like one of the lines of the movie for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's such. He just couldn't sound more flippant if he tried, and it's such a good, like, you're just like, oh, this guy's a prick. It's one of the few times, I think, in the movie that you could generally say that a character delivers a line that maybe does the, has the intended result, maybe is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, sure.
It gets you to just, like, be like, man, screw this M. Bison guy. He's a prick.
She's already told Guile about this a little bit. Chun-Li has. So like this idea has been sort of brought up before, but this is kind of really the like actual start and end to her like her emotional arc, because then she fights him and she kicks his ass. Then she's like stopped by her friends essentially, kind of on accident.
Yeah.
But then like they never come back to it, and like it's just like Guile beats him in the end.
She doesn't really get a final fight in the movie either. Like, you kind of have these pairings at the end.
Yeah.
And she doesn't get one. And maybe it's because Bison doesn't have like a female, I don't know, member in his entourage. and they didn't want her fighting men. I don't know. It's weird to me.
I feel like I feel like you could just have. You could have, like, going back to what you said, you could have had an interesting final fight. Because the final fight in this was kind of interesting. Spoiler, but, like, it's okay. But, like, it could have been even more interesting if it was a triple threat almost, and it was like, you know, dealing with, you know, do you even want to seek out your revenge? Like, what does that mean? Maybe I'm asking too much from this movie.
And Bison has a really good line where he's like, if you would have all fought together instead of fighting against each other, you might have succeeded. And I think that was like a really cool, like, it was a cool teaser of what like could have been, because like even the way that Chun-Li was kicking his ass, and then just like this lame distraction finish that led to Bison escaping and gassing them, which also led to one of the great lines of like, oh no, it's gas. But like, just kind of like a lame, like you would never take your eye off the prize like that.
Yeah, that line.
I don't know.
That line you said is absolutely right. The thing about watching this is it doesn't have to be bad, and they tease.
Yeah, there's some really cool elements.
They tease ideas that you're like, oh, if they flesh this out, like this could have been. It would have still been cheesy, and that's fine. But it would have had a cool story attached to it. You know.
I don't know. I really dug Chun-Li in this movie, and I don't know if that's just because I was like crushing on her when I was a kid when I watched this, but like I don't know, I liked her a lot in this movie.
Yeah,
and the sequence where she was like beating on Bison is maybe like the highlight of the movie to me.
Out of context, I think it's pretty awesome, and and I like the actress, like, and you should watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, like, she actually kicks a lot of ass in that show, but don't want to get too off topic.
I guess my follow-up question is there was a second Street Fighter movie made eventually, and this one was just like strictly based on Chun-Li. I don't know. I guess my question is like, do you think that, or what do you think made them, center on her as a protagonist of a sequel? And like, do you think there were more people like me that when you watch this movie, kind of the standout is Chun-Li?
I don't think that movie, I've never actually seen it, but I don't think that got made because of this scene necessarily. But I think it's more because like the idea of what Chun-Li could be, which is I think present in the game too, where like she's trying to get revenge for her father. Like I think that's in the games. Like it's very simple. Like she's not like throwing fireballs or anything, So it's like you can like hear that story as a pitch for a movie, and you're like, yeah, that could be pretty compelling, so yeah, I think it's more of just like the premise, which this scene hints at the premise, but I don't think this scene itself is the cause for it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And
we'll do eventually, somewhere down the line, we'll do a deep dive into that Chun-Li Street Fighter movie.
Yeah,
but that's pretty much the end of her in this movie.
Yeah, except when she gets hit on in the end, like it's like. It's like she fades into.
But only if you're wearing that dress.
Yeah. It's like she gets risen to the top of the card and then fades into just like getting hit on by Guile in the end. It's like,
And so speaking of Guile, he is breaking into M. Bison's hideout and somehow stumbles upon the secret lair, which Charlie Blanca has been in, and this dude is now full on Hulk. He is green, red hair. It looks goofy as fuck.
Yeah, he looks bad. He looks like, old TV Hulk, kind of bad.
It looks so bad. Like, so bad. And obviously it's all, like, makeup and practical effects, but, like, eef.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you could do with that. It's probably hard to pull off in a way,
But somehow, Guile recognizes that this is Blanca in like 2 seconds flat.
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie, good to see you.
This was we didn't even touch on a lot of them, but I was like, this is another prime example of like you could have had a fight scene here, right? Like you could have seen. Yeah. He could have not recognized him at first, like, and they could, and that's like the kind of the end of the scene is when he could realize it's his friend.
It seems so obvious to do it that way. Yeah. Because you never really see Blanca in action.
Yeah, no. I don't get what they were trying to do with him at all.
And then,
Yeah.
so Guile,
Oh my god.
in his stealth boat that turns invisible on his way to crash M. Bison's
yeah,
fortress, is
in which he
fucking
watched the
watching cassette
VHS.
tapes of his best friend, and they're out with their wives or something like that, and he gets there, and he's about to shoot the motherfucker in the head after like 2 seconds. Like,
Oh my god.
What?
That cassette tape thing was just to like remind you they're friends.
Oh
It's
my
like, oh yeah, I forgot that thing they introduced in minute 1 of the movie.
yeah. Charlie, I'm coming, Charlie.
It's another one of those things where it's like, this is something that would happen in a movie, like, and you could see how they could get there, but they didn't get there, you know? They're like, yep, he's gonna kill him.
And I mean, that's pretty much the last that we see of Blanca, too. The Dulcim just basically says, like, yep, we're going down with the ship. Sorry, we're going to stay down here while everything blows up.
Why did they stay down there? I don't get that. Why
I
didn't
don't
they
get that either.
escape?
Yeah,
Maybe I need to rewatch this part. Dulcim, yeah, they had like a subplot where Dulcim was like trying to show him happy images with like babies and dolphins and stuff.
Yeah, it's...
But what... Yeah.
I feel like the whole Blanca subplot was just such a bust for me. It probably would have been enough if Guile just was chasing after Bison and that was it. Without that, like, I don't know.
Like, yeah, the movie it's dumb and it's based on, like you said, tropes we see in other movies. And, you know, if Guile is G.I. Joe, like, we don't need much more than, like, he wants to beat the big, you know, terrorist bad guy. You know, like, it can be that stupid... Not to say that that's a bad thing. It can be that simple.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think in this case, simpler might have been better.
Yeah.
And, like, I know we've said it a million times, but, like, God, there's just so many characters. There's so much going on in this movie that it's...
This movie could have been an hour... it could have been 90 minutes of Jean-Claude Van Damme trying to get to Bison and just, like, kicking dudes in the head, and it would have been on a 5-star movie, you know?
Just have 100%.
Just have him whip some ass. Yeah.
So we start. So speaking of Guile kicking people in the head, we're gonna start with the final battle is finally going down, and we see all of the matchups kind of starting here. We see E Honda fighting Zangief. We see Ryu and Ken taking on Sagat and Vega, and of course Ken kind of acts like he's gonna bail out on Ryu, but then comes back, and and they have that tag team fight. And then of course we have Guile finally getting his hands on Bison. So some pretty lackluster fighting, especially Ryu and Ken versus Sagat and Vega. If you ask me.
Yeah, it did okay. Like it had like sort of a story, but like, you know, it actually makes me think like I was complaining all these times, but it's like they could have had a fight here, but then it's like when they do have a fight, you see like, well, they couldn't have, so maybe they chose to like cut it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like you said, like if you're gonna have those little skirmishes and take away fights, like you're kind of building up your final confrontation to be this big epic fight, and you just kind of got like a limp noodle with that fight in particular. And then like the Honda versus Zangief fight was fun, and they even had some like Godzilla sounds in there. But like the problem with that, at least to me, is that I don't know, they just didn't have any personal issue with each other, maybe, aside from obviously being on opposite ends of the of the militia there. But like there wasn't like anything, there wasn't any story leading up to it like there was with the Ryu Ken fight or with Guile Bison, if that makes sense.
I do like. I'd also say like their fight wasn't really a fight. Like they just showed us like the highlights of it, like them crashing through the floor, which is awesome, and the Godzilla part was just funny. But like, then there's not a fight. It's just like you cut away and the slam happens. You know, it's like I want to see more of the big dudes slamming into each other. You know, like even despite like I totally agree. Like they have no real reason to actually be fighting, but like I would be
it's just
okay
like
with
two
alone.
big bastards going at it, and I'm with you. I'd be totally fine just seeing that car crash if like you actually saw it.
I want to see the hoss fight. Yeah, they're two
Yeah.
wrestlers. You know, that's their thing. It's like let's see them. Let's see a suplex or something. I want to see one of the guys pick up one of the other guys and throw him into something.
Suplex City. To our listeners of this show, I'm so sorry. We're gonna probably be using wrestling terms and whatever.
It'll happen.
Yeah,
it'll
so
happen.
sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, not sorry. I don't know. As cheesy as it was, and as much as you didn't really see like actual fighting, I still dig the Guile versus Bison fight. I just remember having my Street Fighter Ford as a kid and like having my little toy Guile and like kind of picking him up and spinning him around to do those roundhouse kicks that Guile does at the end of this movie. That has a place
great.
in my heart. Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, like that's like the one thing is like, even though it's still edited so weird and like to hide the imperfections, like there are moments where it's like, yeah, you can see that Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's got some good stuff going on.
He can throw a kick, yeah.
Oh yeah, like spins around, kicks him right in the back of the head. So yeah, so good. The only thing that's disappointing about it was, like I said, this movie could have just been him running through dudes for a while. They tease that moment with the knife is so good, where he pulls the knife out and he acts like he's gonna take on these guys. I want to see that. Like, I get that it's like it's.
They didn't really give
ridiculous.
him like a awesome like ass kicking moment, like kind of that moment where he just clears out an entire room, like Batman did in BVS or whatever. Like he kind of made short work of that assassin, but that was
an amazing kick too.
We're pretty much done with fighting in this movie at this point now, and it kind of seems like a little bit of, maybe a little bit anticlimactic in terms of the fighting department, I guess. But like, I don't know. I guess looking back, like, what's your favorite fight in this entire movie or fight sequence?
I actually think this last one,
Guile Bison.
Yeah, because like you do have some okay stuff happening, but then also what like sort of helps it is like this has, to me, some of the best Bison. He's like just like giving speeches to them all and stuff, and he's saying those lines about being a god, right?
Oh yeah, and it levitates me.
He says the best. I think the best line for me, despite what I've said, is when he said, "What's the matter? You come to fight a madman, and instead find a god? For I beheld Satan as he came down from heaven." It's like, what? It's so good. So like, you know,
that's good stuff.
He's doing that, and then he does start shooting lightning and stuff, and you're like, ooh, okay, what is this movie? You know, it's a.
Stephen E. D'Souza was just coked out of his mind when he wrote this final scene. I love it.
Yeah, and yeah, he just brought that to life. So to me, that's the best fight scene because it somewhat delivers on the promise of what
I agree
the two actors can do.
Yeah, I really wanted to like Ryu and Ken versus Sagat and Vega because I thought the story there like was kind of cool and they built it up, but then like I don't know, the final fight was just kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
So it definitely Guile Bison.
All right. Well,
hey, how cool does his thunder look? It looks pretty badass.
Look pretty good.
Or lightning, I'm sorry.
He was like talking about how his little like thing he floated around in worked. His thing with his little Street Fighter joystick that he used. So
Guile defeats Bison. He's down for the count. Zangief defects, and he has literally lost all of his clothes except for his Speedo now somehow fighting Honda. So he's in his underwear, but he's on the good guy side now.
They had to get him looking like his video game character.
Yeah.
Like, of course, yeah.
Blanca and Dulcium, as mentioned, they are staying down with the ship. We never see their demise, but we can just presume that it happens. And so Guile comes back and starts hitting on Chun-Li. It's pretty weird. We can only assume that they go off and have babies somewhere in the future.
Sure, yeah.
Get married and live a happy life together. And that's that. That's a wrap on Street Fighter.
Yeah, touching on those ending things quick, it's like, okay, fine. Zangief, because he was likable, making those jokes, I guess they wanted to have him not go out like a bad dude.
Yeah.
Sagat and and DJ, who we didn't even talk about at all.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about DJ. He was great.
He was great, but yeah, he was just there at the same time. Like, yeah, they get away, but not really. Like, they got the bison bucks, which is a good payoff.
Yeah.
And then the movie literally ends with all the good guys doing their character poses from the game. They're like victory poses, right?
Is that what that is? It's all their victory poses?
Yeah, I believe it is. Like, it,
Oh, goddamn, that's cheesy.
The base blows
so
up,
good.
and then it's like immediate cut to them all just like, ah! It's like, roll credits. I was like, what? Oh, okay, it's over.
But only if you wear that dress. Hey.
Yeah, and she's into it for some reason. I was like, okay.
So, Colonel, how about that interview? Like, what?
Yeah, this is after he was like touching Cammie's face because she was crying. I'm like, oh, are they gonna kiss? Like, what? And then
that's what I thought watching it actually yesterday. I was just like, oh, I thought he kind of ended up with Chun-Li, but maybe not. Yeah, but then he just rolled on right over to Chun-Li. So
yeah, it's like maybe there's two female characters in the movie, and he's got to touch them both. I guess I don't know.
So yeah, the credits are rolling in this movie, and that is a wrap for Street Fighter, or so we think. There is a post-credit scene, and this is like before Marvel kind of popularized this. But there's a post-credit scene that has Bison's arm coming out from the wreckage from his Ozymandias TV set that just crashed all over him. And this guy is alive, and the game is rebooting, and that would presumably lead us to a sequel to this movie. Now, I guess the question that I have for you, Goo, is do you think that, obviously, had Raul Julia not passed away, do you think that they would make a sequel to this, or is it just like the reception is so just terrible that, they're giving up on it? Because it's not like it did poorly box office wise.
I don't think being a failure critically really hurts certain movies.
I feel like especially not action movies.
It's not like a big success, but it wasn't that well liked. So, maybe I think there's a lot of things at play for sure.
It seems like this would have been like the Batman and Robin, but on the first try rather than like the fourth going out. So
yeah, definitely.
I have one housekeeping note actually that I jotted down after we were done, and that as we discussed at the top of the show here, Jean-Claude Van Damme got about 25% of the budget for this movie just in his own salary, but like he's not in the movie as much as I remember. It's very much an ensemble movie versus like a Jean-Claude Van Damme action movie.
Yeah,
which I thought was funny. If
you're splitting it up, I would say he's in it a majority, if that makes sense. But like that's like being the majority character in Infinity War. Like.
It's almost like saying like he got 20% of the screen time when everyone else got like 5% or something. Yeah, like that, to me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, but
even like I think that Raul Julia had more screen time than he did, than Jean-Claude Van Damme did.
Oh, definitely. Because which makes sense too.
Okay, so I guess this is what it all boils down to. If you had to pick the fatal flaw of Street Fighter and why it wasn't necessarily the success it could have been, what do you think that is?
Like I said, I don't need this to be an actual good movie. So like all the characters and stuff, like that's a problem for sure. But I think the fatal flaw is the movie is called Street Fighter and there's not fighting in it. There's like boat fighting scenes, and there's a big firefight in the end with a bunch of guns, but the fight scenes that do happen are bad. You can give me a too many cooks in the kitchen, as long as all the cooks are fighting essentially. Like, and we see all their, we see all these characters' cool moves brought to life. But that's the fatal flaw for me, the fighting.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. Just to be different though, I think I'm gonna say. There's too many characters that are in strictly to get them in. They don't really serve a purpose. If you got rid of probably half the characters in this movie, Understandably, it would be disappointing for fans of those particular characters, but then like, you could have fleshed out Ryu, you could have fleshed out Ken in that relationship, you could have dedicated some more screen time to Sagat, you could have got Guile and Chun-Li and Bison. Like, I think if it was just those six and less of the other dead weight, then maybe you could have salvaged it a little bit better.
Just those six, and also like balance, like realize that some of the characters they don't really need to be much other than like supporting the other characters' stories, you know? Even though it would be disappointing, I think if you're a fan of the game, you gotta understand, like, to make a good movie, you gotta sacrifice some things you love.
Yeah, you gotta ditch those things. And I mean, too, like, let's say that you are a fan of Blanca, or Dhalsim, or E. Honda. You're probably disappointed anyways in how these characters are treated in this movie. So, like, I don't know, why include them at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through a couple post-production notes here,
okay.
And we're gonna get into the reception of this movie, and oh boy. So currently, it is sitting at a certified rotten 18% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 20% audience rating, so everyone just absolutely hates this movie, and who are we to disagree with them? Some of the reviews of this movie border on scathing to disappointed, so I'll read you some of the best ones. The critics' consensus from Rotten Tomatoes is, though it offers mild entertainment through campy one-liners and the overacting of the late Raul Julia, Street Fighter's non-stop action sequences are not enough to make up for a predictable, uneven storyline. And I feel like that's right on the money. But let's go to what a few other people said. A dreary, overstuffed hodgepodge of poorly edited martial arts sequences and often unintelligible dialogue, wrote the New York Times. Pretty hard to disagree with that. One of the most unintentionally funny movies I've ever seen, which has become a cult classic over the years, and that's from Mass Gamers.
Okay,
I'll agree with that too. This is one of the best ones. It assaults the ears and the intellect. That's from the Independent on Sunday.
That's a little scathing, yeah.
Now this one is my favorite actually in its simplicity. The Washington Post simply says, "Game over."
Oh, I don't know about Come on, that's too cute, you guys.
So Box Office Mojo has given us some figures from this movie, and I was actually surprised to learn that it wasn't a total bust. It had a production budget, as we said, of $35 million, and domestically it tanked. It made $33 million and change, about $33.5 million. But the foreign box office came in at $66 million even, which I find is a little sketchy because I couldn't find a source for that. But this is exactly the type of movie that you'd picture doing well overseas now, like today.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm on board with that. And I mean, overall, it made just under $100 million. Like, do you think that this movie like truly captured the essence of Street Fighter?
I think it does in the wrong ways, if that makes sense. Like I said, it makes sure to like shoehorn in all the characters and like get them in their outfits, you know, so it's like trying to capture the essence of the game by having that stuff. But I mean, like I said, I'm not a big Street Fighter fan, but like the essence of playing Street Fighter is for these awesome, exciting matchups. Like that's why it's still a competitive. Yeah. Like people still play this game, and like I actually enjoy watching people play Street Fighter competitively, even though I don't enjoy playing it as much because of that. So to me, the essence of the game is that one thing of just awesome, exciting matchups, and not making sure the character's in there with their outfit and doing their pose in the end.
Like to me, Street Fighter is kind of about Ryu and to a lesser extent Ken and like their quest to be the best, I guess. And like I thought the stuff with Guile was cool, but and I think that like as a premise worked. But I don't know, like just the way that Ken and Ryu were used, seeing that they're like the faces of the franchise, and just the way that they were miscast in this movie, it didn't work for me. It felt like that one thing kind of felt like it made the whole movie slightly off in my eyes. It just like everything from Ryu and Ken, from the casting to the lack of fight scenes, it didn't work, and it didn't capture that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like just the Ryu and Ken as the focus. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that too.
Let's move on to the second last question, and that, Gooey, is what do you think this movie did for the legacy of video game movies? It's hard to say that it helped it.
Yeah, it wasn't the first, right? Like it came out shortly after Mario Brothers, but yes. I view them as almost like brothers, like of a movie, if that makes sense. And I think they both established like that it was gonna be hard to get people to take these seriously, and what it's really done is made talking about like the idea of video game movies frustrating with me for a lot of people, because people write off the idea of it. But there was one point in time where you would say that about a comic book movie, right? So that's what I think it did.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it totally just like it's ruined, I think, people's perceptions.
It kind of made them, yeah, like Mario and Street Fighter definitely made them, I don't know, kind of almost into like parody movies, because both of them were just so terrible. But I mean, both of them too have like the thread in common of like the studio kind of interfering, and the developers interfering, and just having that too many cooks in the kitchen kind of mentality, I think bled over for both movies. So yeah, it definitely, I don't know that it set back the legacy of video game movies, because like there hadn't been too many up until that point, but I think it just kind of gave them that stigma of like, these are going to stink, or like they're going to be so bad that they're good kind of movies, and like not to be taken seriously, or like with the same credibility as like, think of like the first Tim Burton Batman movie, like that had credibility, and it had just an air of legitimacy that I think still eludes like video game movies to this day. Like it's hard to,
yeah,
it's hard to get that off of it.
Yeah, it like just like before Tim Burton's Batman and like before Superman the movie, there are comic book movies that we don't talk about anymore, really. And that's almost, well, I feel like this one, at least it established that like they're gonna be interesting to watch still, despite that,
I think the legacy of this movie's actually improved over time. Like it was so terrible at first, and like once you kind of appreciate it for what it is, like I actually liken this movie to Batman and Robin. Like that's another movie that's just like it's just so terrible, bad, yeah. But it knows it's terrible, and it's having fun being terrible. So just go with it, like if you go in and you're just like, oh man, I want this awesome story full of compelling characters, like, man, this is not for you.
I actually feel like, to make an analogy here, like I feel like this is analogous with Batman and Robin, whereas like some of the ones now, like the more recent Tomb Raider, like reminds me of like the last Justice League movie, which I'm not a fan of, where it's like technically better, like it's more well made, and it's a more coherent movie, so it like is better. If it's on a scale, it's better, but it's like in a weird spot where it's like not totally good, so it's more like boring, I think. Whereas like this movie and Batman and Robin are like exciting and funny and fun, but bad.
At least they're not cookie cutter run of the mill experiences. Yeah, you could say that, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So this is it. This is the big moment of our debut show here. We're gonna bust it out. We are going to deliberate. So I mean, let's go ahead and let's do it. Gooey, thumbs up or thumbs down on Street Fighter the movie?
So it feels like we've been dumping on it the whole time, right? But I'm actually gonna say thumbs up.
Yes. Yes.
It's really bad, but like, yeah, there's enough.
Woo!
There's enough funny, compelling. Like most of the things I'm complaining about are just like, yeah, I'd obviously like to see a better movie, but it's, even when it's so bad, it's like pretty hilarious,
Yeah, you got to go with it, It's all about your expectations. I don't know. When I sit down and watch Street Fighter, I'm not just like, oh man, this storyline is going to be riveting. I'm with you. I am disappointed that the fight scenes were so bad, but like Raul Julia in this movie is on another level. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I loved it as a kid and I didn't really know any better. But this is a thumbs up movie for me.
Thumbs up for you too. Okay, just so funny because I feel like
I love it.
We've been like constantly dumping on it.
We've been shitting on this movie for the last 2 hours. But
I mean, we were looking at it with like a critical eye, but summing up my feelings about it is more of. But I enjoyed it, you know.
Yeah, and I mean at the end, like, we want to have fun with these movies. We don't want to be too critical, and it's going to be. I think I'm always going to lean more towards the positives in any movie, versus the negatives, and even like, because I mean there are a lot of negatives in this movie, but again, it's just like if you go into it expecting, expecting a big dumb action movie, I think it delivers with that, and I mean nostalgia plays a big part of that too. I think we both saw this when we were younger, and maybe some other movies that we get around to reviewing here might not have that benefit, but for me, yeah, this is a thumbs up.
Yeah, I would say perfect setting is get a couple of friends together, have some beers or something, you know, and then just have a laugh.
There you go. That is our extensive breakdown.
Very extensive, yeah.
Street Fighter, the movie, the legend of Jean-Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia. That we're still talking about 25 years later.
That was beautiful.
So, like we mentioned at the top of the show way back when, we want to give the listeners the opportunity to kind of direct where the show goes. No pun intended. Pun intended. So, in order to do that, first of all, we're going to give you some plugs. And keep in mind when we do this, this is all new. This is our first episode. This is a pilot episode. So, keep that in mind. There's probably going to be some kinks, but we'll try and make them as smooth as possible. But we want you to head over to Twitter at virtualtheaterx and help us choose which movie we cover next. Now, as of right now, we don't. These episodes are gonna kind of come fast and furious whenever you get them. We're aiming to do like bi-weekly, but we don't want to make promises that we can't keep. But we're gonna try for that.
Yeah, that's the eventual goal.
That's the goal. So I know that everybody after listening to this is just gonna absolutely be famished for more virtual theater content. But
but you know, it's you've got another podcast you're running. You're running the site. I've got some podcasts, so you know we're fitting and we have to watch these whole movies. I actually watched Street Fighter twice, so it's a matter of finding the time to watch Street Fighter twice and then record.
It wasn't good enough the first time, so we had to rewatch it the second.
You know that I actually did enjoy it more the second time, so I'm glad for that.
I enjoyed it more after my second beer. All right, so this is the deal. We want you to head over and give us a follow at Virtual Theater X. While you're at it, you might as well just head over and give us a follow. I'm at Spiteri316. Goo is at Gooey Fame. We're pretty cool. We post some cool stuff.
Yeah.
We're pretty rad. So Virtual Theater X, that's going to be where you're going to go, and it's going to have a poll. And the poll is going to have the following 4 options for our next movie that we're going to cover. Option 1, Rampage, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Just the definition of a dumb action movie, and this would be a lot of fun, I think, to cover.
Yes.
It's definitely one of those ones that you kind of like Street Fighter. It's a modern Street Fighter, basically.
It passed the torch to Rampage,
pretty much. And who doesn't love Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? Option 2 is the rebooted Tomb Raider, which came out. Did that come out last year?
Yeah, last year. Early in the year. So
we'll cover that, and then I will also tell you a very funny story about when I went and saw this movie in theaters and got kicked out. So that's poll topic number 2. Yeah.
Okay, that's enticing to vote for that.
Topic number 3, and you can kind of see where the theme here is. It's more modern movies. Assassin's Creed.
Yes. Starring
Michael Fassbender. I'm a big Fassbender fan. I used to be a big Assassin's Creed fan. I know that you've been loving Odyssey, so it'll be interesting to see how this stacks up. I've never actually seen it.
This is the only one of the 4 I haven't seen, but I'm also down to rewatch the other ones.
So that'll be interesting. And then our last option, Warcraft.
Yes.
So I didn't see this one, but I thought that it reviewed kind of okay when it came out. So I actually have somewhat high expectations for this. Maybe not high, but higher. Yeah, I don't know. So we either have to be crushingly disappointed or pleasantly surprised. I don't know.
This was one I specifically remember that it wasn't great, and but then it also did really well overseas. Like I think in China it was like a huge hit, and I always am like fascinated by movies like that, even if they're ones that I don't think are interesting. You know, it's like, oh, okay, like this really connected with a different movie-going audience. So it'll be cool to visit that whenever we do, if it is next episode or whenever. We're definitely going to have to do it sometime.
And just to be clear to everybody, all 4 of these movies will eventually get their day in the sun. It's just we're going to kind of cycle through, and we're going to do some newer stuff, some older stuff, some middle of the road, and we'll keep it fresh, and we'll try and theme all the selections and stuff like that. Obviously, you know, we want to give you control, but we also want to we don't want to do, you know, 4 new movies in a row either, because I think that just gets a little bit stale. So
yeah, it'll be nice. Like there's been 3 decades of video game movies, so we want to kind of, you know, present like here's some from this time and some from this time, and you know, they're all very distinctly their own time.
Yeah. So your options are Rampage, Tomb Raider, Assassin's Creed, and Warcraft. So I think that honestly every one of those is going to be a good show, because every one of those has something going for it. And I can't wait to see what's going to win. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about the interactivity that we're trying to bring. So that's going to do it for us for this episode. Definitely make sure that you head over to SoundCloud and check out Virtual Theater. We're coming to SoundCloud, iTunes, all of that good stuff. Make sure that you go over there. Give us a like, and definitely subscribe. We'd really appreciate a review too, actually. We're going to do something in the future where maybe we'll give you some bonus movies, something along the lines of like Avengers or Star Wars, if we hit a certain review quota. So we'll have more information on that later. But for now, thank you so much for listening. Like I said, head over to Twitter, at VirtualTheaterX, at Spiteri316, at GUIFame. Make sure that you're following all 3 for the latest updates on this podcast. Head over to SoundCloud and to iTunes, search for Virtual Theater. That's going to do it for us. I had a blast, Goo. Thanks for doing this with me, man.
Yeah, this was a swell time. I am pumped to see what gets chosen.
I can't wait to see that. Until then, thank you for watching Virtual Theater.
Thank you.
Each week. Fuck. I shouldn't have said each week. I'm sorry. Can you edit that out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll
right.
we should have... Yeah.
48 seconds. Okay.
Each episode?
Each episode of Virtual Theater. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let me try that again. God damn it.